It is a very challenging subject because the whole situation is very fluid. Incidentally, my association with IDSA as an executive council member has come to an end last month, and therefore I want to correct it. I'm no longer with IDSA, but I am a life member, and I have also emotional attachment with IDSA since the days of Reverend K. Subramaniam. Now, as I said, the subject is fluid and it is extremely difficult for us to make definitive judgments or definitive decisions about it. And we must look at the question in things are still developing. The whole issue is what you call a work in progress. Now, the subject is of Afghanistan and Pakistan, and what is the road ahead. And when you look at, we must understand the Af-Pak relationship, if in the title as we have dealing with it. Now, if in one of the scholarly writings, this relationship was described as tenuous and grudging coexistence. I think it is an apt description of this relationship, that it has all along since 47, with the birth of Pakistan, has remained a tenuous and grudging, with one exception, and now we are entering the second exception. The first exception was between 1997 to 2001, when the Taliban were in power in Kabul there. I think Pakistan and Afghanistan then, or Pakistan and the Kabul regime. Afghanistan includes its people, and they have always had reservations on how to deal with Pakistan. But except for that period, because if you look back into the history, and it is not time to go into the history, recall 1947, Afghanistan had serious reservations in recognizing Pakistan. Afghanistan was the only country which voted at the United Nations against the membership of Pakistan, United States. Afghanistan, you know, experienced trade blockade from Pakistan. The Pakistan government did not recognize the Afghanistan government since the Soviet intervention for almost 12 years until 1992. And then, now they have, since 2014, Pakistan has put a double layered barbed wire fence with Afghanistan all along the Durand line. There are many examples to show how difficult the relationship between the two have been. Now, I said the exception was in 1997 to 2001. And now we are entering another phase of this exception. You can call it second exception, you can call it exception 2.0, when Taliban has again taken control of Afghanistan. But there is a lot of difference. The situation in 1997, late 90s, was very different from what it is today. In terms of all the parameters of this relationship, including its geopolitics, and we'll come to it in a short while in a different way. What are the issues which make this relationship tenuous and grudging? To begin with, there is a sovereignty issue. And the sovereignty issue is located on the Pashtun area, the Pakhtunistan, in whatever manner you call it. Afghanistan never wanted to see this become a part of Pakistan. And that's the problem which has started with the drawing of Durand Line way back in 1893. In fact, most of the and that line kept it away. It divided the Pashtun community across the families, across the relationship, and it was not acceptable to them. And till date, though this question has now gone on back burner for because of the time and various other factors, but the issue has not been resolved, and the issue remains in the minds and hearts of Pathans, of Pashtun people in a very serious manner. I said Durand Line was the main culprit for that matter, and that was created by the colonial masters. In fact, all the colonial lines are the roots of problems in South Asia. And all the lines drawn by the British, whether it is Durand or let's not go into McMahon and Redcliffe and other lines, but they have all created a bilateral problem. So it created the source. But Pakistan and Afghanistan have not been able to resolve it. The Durand line had, besides Pakhtun issue, other problems also. You know, it was the Afghan delegation said it was almost thrust down their throats, and there was no translation in Dari, which many people in the delegation did not understand. There are various problems about it. So anyway, the first major problem between the two is a question of sovereignty, where Pakistan has serious reservations on the position taken by Afghanistan, and Afghanistan has serious reservations on the Pakhtun area. In fact, when Pakistanis started integrating FATA, a frontier agency, into the Afghans had serious problems about it. And 1952, the Afghans even included Balochistan into their greater Pakhtunistan issue. So they have a very, very serious, very emotional issue about it. The second is of border management. And the border management starts first with the Durand line, but then there are refugees and all kind of illegal crossings between them. There's a movement of terrorists and extremists across the border, which Afghanistan has repeatedly and almost perpetually been complaining. Pakistan is not, I think Pakistan has developed an expertise in the cross-border terrorism. And it is not only against India. The Afghans are facing it to some extent. Many times even Iranians also complain about it. So this is what it is. That again, along the border, there is a whole question of drugs and drug cartels which are moving about it. The economic smuggling which really takes place. Then the question is of transit and trade. Afghanistan, as you know, is a landlocked country, and its access to sea is only via Pakistan. And Pakistan provides it in very, I say, stingy manner. And sometimes it is even blocked. The Karachi route is being blocked, either by the groups like Hikmat Yar in the 90s, sponsored and supported by Pakistan, or by Pakistan itself. And Pakistan wants an access through Afghanistan to the whole of Central Asia. But Pakistan is not willing to give access to Afghanistan to rest of the South Asia. India included, and India is very, very prominent there. Recall the Kathmandu SAARC summit, where the connectivity project was proposed, and all the other South Asian countries were willing to accept it, except Pakistan, because Pakistan did not want Afghanistan to have a very smooth, seamless transit access to India. And this is where the whole SAARC has come into problem. But this is a major issue, and this continues to be there between the two countries. Then there is a question, lastly, of the geopolitical equations, in which Afghanistan has its own equations. It has its own neighbors in Central Asia. It has reasonably good relations with former Soviet Union and later on Russia. It is now developing relations with China in its own mode. The Pakistanis would want to control almost all the geostrategic engagements of Afghanistan, and their whole problem arises. And then there are divisions between between Afghanistan and Pakistan on what kind of geopolitical, geostrategic equations should be there. The biggest is, of course, the India factor. And in this India factor, all the time, the Pakistanis focused on the fact that Afghanistan should not have a good relationship with India. Now, India has old civilizational ties with Afghanistan. You know, the whole question of Kabuliwala was born much before Pakistan was born. And those kind of ties are at the level of the people. So any affection of the Afghan people towards India is not acceptable to Pakistan, and Pakistan tries to block it in several ways. There was a reference to this hijacking, and this was very painful experience for India. But there are new inputs which have come. Hijacking was done by the Pakistani sponsored groups which were based in Afghanistan and based in Pakistan. They were the one who took the hijacking. The Taliban have now come up with an interpretation in the current context in which they have said that we in fact did not encourage, did not support, did not endorse the kind of act which the Pakistani based groups had done it. In fact, we facilitated the release of the plane. Now, this is very fascinating in the sense that at a time when Taliban have taken over and when they want to have a reasonably acceptable face to the world, they have come up with incident to explain that in hijacking, and they have sent some messages to India of continuing engagement that they were really not involved. But India factor is a very critical factor in Afghanistan-Pakistan relationship. Now, these are the major roadblocks, you can call it, in the smooth relationship between Afghanistan and Pakistan. And none of these roadblocks, let us be very clear, none of these roadblocks were seriously addressed and resolved during the happy period of the Taliban regime in Afghanistan during the 90s. From 1997 to 2001, I mean, there was a lot of bonhomies. There were a lot of good equations between them. The Pakistanis trained the Taliban. They even supplied them with the weapons. They supplied them with the money. They politically supported them. There were only two countries who had recognized that regime, Pakistan and Saudi Arabia. The whole of the international community had not risen. Now, but none of the major issues which have divided Afghanistan and Pakistan were resolved. Why I am saying this? Because these are the issues which will still be on the table, and I think to some extent would influence what kind of a future relationship the two are having. Now, this kind of an exception which was there, we must see in the light of that exception as to what extent the new exception of you call it the second exception, when the Taliban has taken the assume, Afghanistan appears at the moment in complete grip of Pakistan, and certainly after the formation of the government, the kind of role which the Haqqani network has got into the government making, the way the Pakistan ISI chief, General Hamid, went to Kabul and sorted out the government formation, sorted out the so-called power sharing arrangement, marginalized some of the people who are better exposed to it, clearly shows, and this is what the media is telling, this is what the strategic community is seriously thinking about, that Afghanistan is in the total grip of Pakistan. The question which I am raising here is that really so? Or will it be so for the time to come? They call it an interim government composition. When and how the new government will come, when and how the changes would be made in the interim government is not very clear to anybody else. And there are obviously two phases of this government which has come there. In terms of what you call the rhetorically softer version of their character as to how they want to deal with the international community and regional neighbors, and the real situation on the ground where the internationally acknowledged terrorists are in command of the situation. And not only that, but there is a huge difference also in the foot soldiers on the one hand and the leadership on the other hand. The leadership may be articulating something, but foot soldiers are not trained. They are not acculturated into the moderate or the softer version of governments. So you have this duality in the present government of the soft rhetorics and hard realities. And we have to deal with that kind of a dichotomy which exists, and it is absolutely clear to them. Now, when we say that whether it would be the same Taliban, the new leadership, it's not a new leadership. The Taliban leadership is claiming that we would be different. And besides their claims, there are some other factors which we must keep it in mind. There are, if not very serious, there are very important ideological fault lines in the leadership. You know, the difference when it is easy to get the diverse groups together when you're fighting a common enemy or common adversary, which is what Taliban were doing so far. It is extremely difficult and a different cup of tea to run a government and share power when there is no common enemy in the sight. So I think now what we have there is a situation, and this is where there are ideological differences between whatever the nuanced differences are between Deobandi and Wahhabism. And Wahhabism took over then through Pakistan and Saudi Arabia during the 90s with the kind of support which they have given to Al-Qaeda, the kind of association they even have now with Al-Qaeda will continue to be there. Then there are differences in their regional exposure. There are leaderships which are exposed only to Pakistan. And there is a leadership which is exposed to other international community. They call it simply the Doha Group or the Quetta Shura Group or Peshawar Shura Group or Rahabari Shura Group. These are different ideological formations there. And this would have an impact on their dependence on Pakistan. Because there are people like Baradar, Mullah Baradar, who was arrested for 7 to 8 years by Pakistan and has absolutely sore experiences of what Pakistan can do. And that's why you would saw immediately before formation of the government, there were even a statement saying that we would not accept interference from any country, and some people added including Pakistan. Not only at the popular level, where there were protests against Pakistan's interference in Panjshir Valley and others, but even otherwise there is a problem. So there are differences from what we thought Taliban earlier was. I think earlier there was a little more cohesiveness. They were raw group. Pakistan was training them. Pakistan was pumping them. Now they are the people who have had experience of the past 20 years of fighting in one form or the other. And they also have the experience of losing their government in the 1990s and how alienating and antagonizing an international community which did not let them. Now, to these divisions, I think to a very large extent, the role of the international community would decide as to how much their dependence upon the Taliban's dependence on Pakistan would continue to be. And to my mind, for the international community at large, and particularly India, the more dependent the Taliban are from Pakistan, the better it is for India. And any regime in Kabul, which has been independent of Islamabad, which has been independent of the military and the intelligence setup, security setup in Pakistan, has always been preferred by us, has always been good to us, has always been more moderate, more soft in whatever manner you want, more representative of the Afghan people. So in the present context, if, for instance, if today the international community, like during the 1990s, and there are two, your subtitle says road ahead, and I see there are two directions, there are two roads ahead, in fact. The one road is that international community is capable and fully equipped to destabilize Taliban, this government. There is no doubt about that. With these divisions within the Taliban, with the kind of Khorasan group which exists there, the TTP which exists there, Northern Alliance which exists there, the financial constraints and the problems which this regime is facing. There is a food crisis, there is a financial crisis. It can create a hell lot of a problem for the Taliban regime. And even at present, almost $7 to $9 billion, which has been blocked up. The Pakistan's access to, the Afghanistan's access to international finances, which they have their own finances, is creating a problem. And this is, I think, one of the biggest pressure which is there on the Taliban in order to become more, more acceptable, more accommodative. So by exploring the internal fault lines in various ways, and I am not going into the, we do not know the details of what the CIA director and the Russian national security advisor has had discussions in New Delhi with the national security advisor of Delhi, what kind of assessment which they are having. But the international, US included, Europe included, the international community is capable of destabilizing Taliban, but it is not capable, again, let me underline, it is not capable of uprooting them. And this is where we must be very clear of the constraints on the international community, that the Americans tried it for 20 years, howsoever half-heartedly they worked, but this is what they could not do. So the hard reality is that, yes, Afghanistan can be destabilized. The Taliban regime can be destabilized, which means Afghanistan would be destabilized, which would mean whole of South Asia would be destabilized. And all the regions, Central Asian republics also, where there are common boundaries and common ethnic contiguities, will also be destabilized or one. And that is possible, which can keep this regime, if it becomes repressive, on the toes. But then it will also result into pushing that regime largely into the lap of Pakistan continuously. It is possible that China comes to their support, but there are severe constraints on to what extent China can take care of financial and all other, and would be willing to do that. Because in all statements which the Chinese making, apparently appear to be very friendly to the Taliban, but there is always a line of caution that the Taliban have to behave in a normal manner. They would not prefer, they are themselves worried about the Uyghur and the Xinjiang province. So the one option, one direction of the road for international community is that if Taliban does not behave, it has the capacity to destabilize and keep the pot boiling. To what extent it is in the interest of the region you can keep your fingers crossed. The second road is that the international community can have a calibrated engagement with Taliban. And calibrated engagement would amount to having, give and take and continuous reciprocity. We do this, you do this, we do this, you do this. The Taliban understand that language. The fact that Americans had got into a written agreement with Taliban, it is so unfortunate that Americans, out of their total wits for leaving Afghanistan, they had an agreement with Taliban, not with the Afghan government. And that agreement was almost a total surrender of what Taliban really wanted. But anyway, the calibrated engagement for the international community could be that this is what we expect. And it would be very interesting, see very carefully the latest statement which has been issued by the religious chief Akhund on Taliban's attitude to the international community, in which they repeated underlined that we will have very friendly relations with the neighbors. We do not want to create any problem for them. We will not allow the terrorist groups to go in there. We want to have normal relations with the international community. We want to have trade. We want to go to the United Nations, whatever else it is. So there is a long statement outlining the Taliban's approach to the world outside. The underlying message of that, that statement is that we will be accommodative to the international community. Don't disturb us on internal matters. They have made no commitments on the human rights. They have human rights in general, but no commitments on women, no commitment on what kind of freedoms they would permit. They are not talking about. So I think this is the kind of a message. And to begin with, the international community will have to take it on the face value. But is it possible to have a calibrated engagement in which you have constraints and you have windows of contacts and engagement open with the Taliban? I think it is possible. I think it should be tried, at least given an attempt to begin with, and see in a month or two, maybe in a year, maybe in 6 months, whether Taliban are shaping in a different way or not. Because I further underline that Taliban's independence from Pakistan is critical to the stability of Afghanistan and the stability of the whole region. Now, lastly, therefore, I think it is in India's interest also that international community starts a calibrated engagement, which will suit India's long-term interest. While doing so, I think India must do one thing. So far, to my understanding, so far, India's Afghanistan policy has been enslaved by two factors. One, obsession with Pakistan, and secondly, total dependence on the US. And to a very large extent, India's Afghan policy has got to be liberated from these two constraints. We should not excessively be obsessed with whatever the Pakistan does, we have to do it against it. Have no mistake and no illusion that Pakistan also faces a severe dilemma in dealing with Taliban and Afghanistan. It is not an easy road for them, and they fear that that Taliban who were housed in Pakistan territory were more dependent upon them. A Taliban which has a whole state under their control would be less dependent upon them, or would want to be less dependent upon them. The Pakistanis realize that. The Pakistanis also realize that there are a host of issues which I listed earlier, which they will have to face upon them. Therefore, India's policy should moderate itself on the Pakistan obsession on the one hand, and moderate itself, not disjunct itself on the total dependence on American or the NATO approach to Afghanistan. I am glad we have started, reinforcing our dialogue process with countries like Russia and Iran, and we are also in touch with some of the Doha, including Qatar. And we must also, we are doing that, but we must strengthen that. Our contact points with the fault lines, ideological fault lines among the Taliban. So the groups which appear to be moderate and which can be cultivated should be cultivated, and groups which need not be cultivated should not be cultivated. And while doing that, we have to prepare for the possible thrust and pressure on the terrorist front from the groups which are very adversarial to India. Our CDC, the Chief of Defense Staff, said very clearly that we can manage all the terrorist pressures in Kashmir or various other areas. Wish him well. I think we can manage. But on the same time, at the same front, it is necessary for us to resolve our internal problems on two fronts. One, the alienation of Kashmir. For whatever extent it is, we must try and bridge it. And secondly, should not help any polarization along communal lines within India, which will have a more adversarial reaction or which will give greater legitimacy to the forces which are adversarial to us and will be pampered by Pakistan with the so-called strategic depth of Afghanistan. I don't see much of a chance of the so-called strategic depth developing, but these are the aspects which we must keep it in mind. Thank you very much.